Русский? Советский.
Hello boys and girls and welcome to another episode of Ushanka Show, stories about life in the Soviet Union. My name is Sergei Sputnikoff and I was born in the USSR. Recently one of my supporters on Patreon, Tyson, made a request to make a video about Soviet tourists going to Japan, so that video will be coming up next. But in today's video we're going to talk about KGB involvement in Soviet tourism, because every group of Soviet tourists had at least one or two KGB representatives. Now, if you're interested in the topic of Soviet tourism and Soviet vacation, I already have a separate playlist, and link will be below in the comment section. And a while back, I already made a 2-hour-long video reading the diary of one of the ladies from Ukraine who went with her husband on a cruise around Western Europe, so link will be also below in the comments. And if we talk about the KGB watching over Soviet tourists abroad, I have to mention 1984 comedy Moscow and Hudson with Robin Williams. I found that movie very funny, the second part, the New York part. I didn't find the funny part in Moscow. But I strongly recommend to watch that show because it had Russian actors involved. So they portrayed really well KGB operatives that were watching over Soviet artists in New York while several of them are trying to escape. So the KGB guys were pretty much shepherds because Soviet tourists were required to move around in groups. You weren't allowed to explore capitalist country on your own. So they will herding you from the hotel to the stores or to museums. And their main job was to prevent anyone from escaping, as well as make sure that everyone behaves properly, presenting the Soviet Union in the best light. So anytime the Soviet hockey team or any other Soviet sports team will travel abroad to play, there'll be a KGB operative with them to help them out and to watch over them, as well as like any Soviet artists will go, like theater group or circus groups, they'll have a KGB personnel with them. And of course I see it can be annoying because you cannot have fun. You just cannot get out the hotel and go hit the bars. But apparently some people thought that was actually helpful to have a KGB guy watching over you like an angel. For example, the famous Soviet-era actor Zinovy Gert left quite an interesting story about his attitude towards the KGB supervisors, and we're going to read it right now. So he wrote in his book, "In general, I have a very warm relationship with the KGB. I knew a guy, basically one of those who always traveled abroad with our theater. They were introduced like this: this is an employee of the Ministry of Culture. And among ourselves, and I don't know why, we always call them the 41st. So number 41, for some reason, was a nickname for the KGB supervisors, the 41st. And I developed a very warm relationship with one of these guys, a guy named Igor. Once in Spain, I got terribly drunk at some friendly society." So that would be like a friendly society, is like a society that have a promote friendly relationship with the Soviet Union. "In the morning, Igor came to my room and he brought some snacks, a bottle of sour milk, kefir, and some pills, and he said, 'State security is looking after you. It was I who brought you in yesterday, undressed you, and put you to bed.'" Later that day, we were walking with him through the Plaza de Toros in Madrid and sat down on a bench. And Igor said thoughtfully, "Zinovy Yefimovich, I recently looked at your file. You know, it's big. It's like a volume of Marx Das Kapital. But don't be afraid. I went to the general. I vouched for you, and he gave me permission to burn all that waste paper. Right now, all you have in your folder just the personal data." And it looks like this conversation was already like in the 80s because Zinovy replied. I replied flippantly, "Thank you, of course, but I don't care what they have on me. Well, they won't let me to go abroad, but I've traveled enough. They won't put me in jail. Times are different." And Igor listened to my chatter and he said slowly and clearly, "Zinovy, these are always the times. Always the times." So Zinovy say, "Hey, times are different." And he's like, "Nope, times are not different. They're always the times to put you in prison." And it's kind of funny that Zinovy mentioned that he got drunk at the Soviet Friendship Society event, because according to this document, which is from 1979, it's by the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, top secret. That's about establishing general rules of behavior of Soviet citizens that travel to socialist country, and general rules of the Soviet citizens, how they're supposed to behave in capitalist and developed countries. And I'm planning to make a separate video when we're going to analyze the entire document, but this is page 10, and it says that Soviet citizens abroad are banned from abusing of alcoholic beverages, appearances in public places and on the street in an intoxicated state. So technically, Zinoviev should be in big trouble if the KGB guy had to carry him back to his hotel. Okay, my friends, I hope you enjoyed this short story about friendly KGB service for the Soviet tourists abroad. And if you did, please don't forget to like this video, maybe share it with your friends. And I'll talk to you soon. До побачення, goodbye. And as a bonus, in case you haven't seen this video, I attached my old video about KGB had 11 reasons to refuse your trip abroad. Enjoy the show.
Добрый день, дорогие друзья! В эфире программа Ushanka Show. Hello, comrades, and welcome back to Ushanka Show. I'm very sorry, but we need to return back to the boring topic of the Soviet people traveling to the other countries. So for a while, we followed the cruise diaries of the angry Soviet wife Nelly, who went on a Northern Seas cruise with her husband and visited Sweden, Denmark, England, France. Also, in my video number 98, Soviet Vacation Final Preparation for Traveling Abroad, I covered quite a bit about how hard it was to get approved actually to go on a trip to the other country and how expensive it was. So people were willing to pay their annual income. So even with the labor union discount, you had to pay $600, $800 for this 2-week cruise, which is amounts pretty much to the annual income of the Soviet engineer. But also I talked there about that you had to get approved for traveling, right? So you had to collect documents from your local labor leader that you're a good worker and that you have a good behaviors and such. So today we're going to look at the KGB documents that actually was declassified, and we'll get some interesting information about what could be the reason why KGB would tell you no. So check this out. This is the actual KGB report, Докладная записка, dated from October of 1970, and it was declassified in 2013. So this is Ukrainian KGB. So this is a document that states that Ukrainian KGB refused 2,699 people in their applications for going to the other countries. So that's in 2 years. In 1969, 1,200 people got refused, and in 1970, 1,490, so quite a jump. So what were the most frequent reasons for refusing people to leave the country? And interesting, the word they use, it's not refusal, it's отвод. So it's kind of like you being bypassed. So it's not really you got refused, you just got bypassed or rerouted, отвод.
Номер 1.
Number 1, компромат. So this is a popular Russian word which actually I think made it into the English language too. Компрометирующие материалы. So any materials that compromise you. So compromise and materials, компромат. So that was the number 1 reason why people got bypassed, refused. And KGB actually specifies that compromat in this case means that there was a criminal record on the person that applied for the trip or his relatives. So if your brother got in trouble and got into jail, you now have compromat on yourself, so you will be refused because you're not a reliable person since your relatives are not reliable. So 1,178 people got refused because of some kind of compromat on them. I would make a guess. So another compromat could be, for example, if any of your relatives were on the occupied territories. For a long time, all the way into 80s, we had the question, was anybody of your relatives or you under Germany during the World War II? So if you lived in Ukraine and Ukraine got occupied by Germany, then you need to put in your papers that yes, I was living in occupied territories, because that makes you a suspicious person. You have a compromat on you.
Номер 2.
Number 2. Аморальное поведение в быту. 529 people. So that's like immoral behaviors in your everyday life. So if you were cheating on your spouse, if you were caught doing something stupid when you're drunk, well, actually drunk is a separate issue. So immoral behaviors in your life, so at work or at home, all can get you in trouble too. So 529 people get refused for that. So like they see if you acting naughty in Soviet Union, you definitely can act naughty in other countries, and you can put shame on the Soviet citizens.
Номер 3.
Number 3. Злоупотребление спиртными напитками. So there's excessive alcohol consumption. 110 people. So once again, if there's any reports on you being stopped for drunk driving, if you were a rich guy and had a car, or if you were behaving somewhere being drunk, so any record on you of being caught drunk and doing something stupid can get you in trouble too. So 110 people got refused for the excessive alcohol consumption. Злоупотребление, it's an interesting Russian word.
Номер 4.
Number 4. Осведомленность в секретах. So having access to some classified information. 193 people. So that's mostly applies to your jobs, since a lot of factories were working for military. So you could have some kind of clearance to work on tanks or weapons or whatever. So if you know some state secrets, then they will look like, hey, we can let you to the other country because you carry a lot of state secrets. I once got refused on that reason for осведомленность в секретах. Although I didn't know any single secret, I applied. I got the job at the place that was actually making equipment for military, but I was like 1 month at the job, still was going through training, had no access to anything, no clue about anything. But this old KGB fart look at my papers like, oh no, there's no way we're going to allow you to go to Germany. You have access to our secrets. I was so mad. So this KGB document has very interesting statistics attachment, where it actually states 13 main reasons that people get refused, and they have it break it down by different Ukrainian regions. So on the left, there's the list of regions, so Vinnytsia, Volyn, Voroshilovgrad, Kiev, and so on. And it lists all these different, I won't say excuses, but reasons why was refusal done and how many people got refused in each region. So it's quite intensive statistics. So let's take a look at it. So here I turn the document sideways so we can actually read. And it's basically 11 different reasons that KGB utilized, or excuses, to refuse people in their application for traveling. So you just want to be a tourist, you want to see friends, and they look at your qualities, and this is the 11 reasons they might say no. First one, and it's the most amazing one, it's so Soviet, it's not even funny. It's политическая незрелость. And it's really hard to translate, because незрелость, it's like you're not ripe, pretty much. But if you apply it to the person, like you're not ready for something. So politically, you're not ready. So your brain is not developed to be a strong, has a communist attitude. So you're politically not ripe, politically not enough educated or something like that. So that's one of the reasons you can get refused. So if you express your political views that differ from political views of the Communist Party, they may say, no, you can't go to the other country. And not many people got refused on that reason. Everyone was smart enough not to say anything stupid. But there were some people, looks like Kharkov, Eastern Ukraine, had quite a few politically unripe people, and as well as Vinnytsia. Those are two places that had the most. Second reason, and we already discussed it, наличие компромата. So this is any compromised materials on you, any document. That one is number one, most popular. So if anybody had a criminal record or relatives had criminal records, they'll get refused. And that seems like Ivano-Frankovsk, which is Western Ukraine, Donetsk, Eastern Ukraine, Lvov, a lot of people in Lvov, Western Ukraine. And I bet you that's not criminal records, that's because relatives were maybe participating in nationalist movement, fighting Soviets. So quite a bit in Western Ukraine regions had issue with compromat. Lvov is number one. Next one is низкие морально-бытовые качества. That's a low moral behaviors. So, and it's like in everyday life. So drinking, stealing, being rude. Another very popular reason to get refused, especially in Eastern Ukraine, Dnepropetrovsk, Donetsk. I think those were like a heavy industries areas with a lot of drinking. So that's probably, usually drinking always comes with the low moral standards. Next one is злоупотребление спиртными напитками. So that's excessive alcohol consumption. Popular recreational activity of the Soviet workers. Voroshilovgrad, another industrial center in eastern Ukraine, hardcore, first place, and then you got Crimea, cheap wine, and third place is Donetsk, another big industrial area of the eastern Ukraine. Next one is interesting, it's due to illness, and what we're talking about is schizophrenia. I was practicing, but I can't say the word schizophrenia, or epilepsy. So if you have those issues, you won't be able to travel. How about that? Next reason, it's so Soviet, it's just as bad as the political unripeness. It's недобросовестное отношение to do. So that's like you don't have a good attitude towards your job. So you don't work good, you skip days, you're always sick. So you don't treat your job like you're supposed to. And to my shame, Kiev is number one. In both years, 13 people got refused for the poor work practices and bad attitude in 1969, and 25 people get refused in next year, 1970, a year before I was born. Next one is just funny. It's намерение использовать поездку в корыстных целях. So that's you're planning to use the trip to make some money. So like you got greedy aims or greedy targets to use this trip. You should be really dumb to tell a KGB officer, yeah, I'm planning to bring a bunch of, cameras or vodka or some other stuff, caviar, so I can sell and make some money. But there were some dumbasses like that. Lvov, Ukraine, Western Ukraine, 13 people got refused because they admitted that they're planning to use this trip for the business purposes to make some extra money. That's a horrible thing to do in Soviet Union, to think about making extra money. Okay, we're moving along. Next reason you can get refused is наличие родственных или иных связей за границей. So, it's existence of relatives or any other connections in the other countries. So if you have a relative who immigrated to Canada or lives in Germany, even distant relative, or some kind of other connections, they can say, no, you can't travel because we're afraid you're going to ask for political assignment or family reunion and you won't come back. So that's a good one. So if any of your relatives, like Western Ukraine, a lot of Ukrainians from West left to Canada after World War I, if they find that you have relatives, they'll tell you, no, you can't go. And Donetsk, for some reason, Eastern Ukraine was the number one place for refusal like that. And then Nikolaev was number two. So both places are Eastern Ukraine. And then we had Kiev. I would think Western Ukraine will be more popular in that, but no. So if you have relatives in other countries, KGB might say, nope, you can't go. All right, next one is по режимным соображениям. So this is the one that you had access to some state secrets, usually at your job. So you have regime, and if they you have to bring a paper from your work that says, hey, he has no access to anything, like in any type of sensitive information. But if you won't be able to provide it, or the company says, hey, no, he has access, then they'll tell you no. So here we're looking at Dnipropetrovsk, which was a huge industrial facilities there, and a lot of it related to the missile buildings, construction, and other military-related factories. So a lot of people got refused there. Kiev, similar situation in Kiev. There was a lot of defense related industries. In Nikolaev, shipbuilding. So you could tell just by the locations where the military facilities were. Okay, so this one even more Soviet. I mean, it's getting from bad to worse to even worse. So this is высказывание изменческих намерений. Well, first of all, you should be a dumbass if you tell in a KGB officer face that you hate government and you can't stand living in Soviet Union and stuff like that. So that's like you express treasonous moods or intents. Once again, you should be a real dumbass to express anything like that, because you can get in trouble, not just being refused to go to travel. You can go to travel to opposite direction to Siberia and cut some trees there for 10-15 years for treasonous intent. And looks like Odessa was the worst place. So biggest port city in Ukraine, Odessa, they had the most treasonous attitudes there. This one is relates to people who already traveled before and they acted inappropriately in the past while being in other countries. So these guys, not many of them. So some people managed to go second time and they just look at the previous records, and if the leader of the group put some notes like, hey, this guy got drunk or was harassing locals or trying to steal something at the stores, that will go on your file, and then KGB will check and says, nope, sorry buddy, you going nowhere anymore. And the last one, другие мотивы, other reasons. So quite a few people got refused for other reasons, especially in Odessa. Odessa, port city, there's a lot of people got refused for other reasons, which is they don't specify. And it'll be interesting to find out what actually reasons were, but Odessa was really heavy. Odessa, Donetsk, and Dnipropetrovsk. There was some other reasons that KGB decided not to specify, but quite a few people got refused. 208 people got refused for other reasons in 1970 alone. So you can only imagine people's disappointment. I mean, this is very expensive, so people had money. It was really hard to get those. People had to wait for years for their turn to go on this trip. So you have money, you manage to get the путевка, and then KGB says, no, you can't go. So there's a lot of broken hopes, broken hearts. 1,500 people in 1970 were planning to go, and KGB said no. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Many times I was told, some people like point blank tell me like, don't ever say that Soviet Union was like a low security prison. But I think looking at this document, it definitely looks like it was a low security prison, because if they tell you can't go on a cruise because you drink too much, and here in America people go on a cruise to drink excessively, so you could tell you it was a special place, Soviet Union. Well, anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you soon. До свидания. Goodbye.
Enjoying the content? Support the author by picking up a copy of their book.